Fellow South Africans, you already know when the church gets involved, that means things are serious. Those of you who are new in South Africa, I'm talking about you, illegal foreigners and also legal foreigners. When South Africans rise up and then you see the church getting itself involved, you might just know that the church comes in as a voice of reason. It comes in as a voice that says, we've been observing, and what we have observed, this is who is wrong, and we are not saying the other side is right either. But there has to be a point where these two forces have to come together. But unfortunately, the church has realized that the Ramaphosa administration has no interest in meeting the people of South Africa anywhere in the middle. Instead, the Ramaphosa administration, it is out to please other people than South Africans, and then turn around on South Africans and treat them with an iron fist. Something that South Africans hate the most. South Africans are the power. Until the world understands that South Africans are the power, it will be the better for their chest pains. So I don't want to make this video about what my thoughts are. I want you to listen to the church coming and saying, government, you did wrong. And the only way you can do right is to listen to the people that entrusted you with their power. I love that. I mean, I don't know why I never came across the press briefing of the church yesterday, the 25th of June, but I'm glad that I came across it. And I would like you to listen to the press briefing. You will be impressed. You will nod and you'll be very appreciative to the church. Yes, sometimes we do feel betrayed by the church when it's quiet, while we are overwhelmed with the government that does not want to listen to us. But it's never too late. So I want to say thank you to the church. Personally, I want to say thank you. I heard your plea and I agree with your plea, because even on this channel, we continuously say we are all about peace. But we are also directly facing our government and we are saying, solve this problem now. Don't come and give us excuses and take out 600 million rand to waste on what? For a day? To protect illegal foreigners? No, we cannot accept that. But thank you to the church. Probably when you are done watching the press conference yourself, you'll be appreciative towards the church. But we appreciate. Thank you. So I'm going to leave you with the press briefing. Thank you all for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much for this privilege. And the purpose of our gathering is to make a call and a plea to the nation at large during this time, and to the state president, the leaders of the planned protest action of 30th June 2026, and to the law enforcement agencies of the Republic of South Africa. There's no gainsaying the fact that this matter of undocumented foreign nationals in our country has assumed unprecedented crisis levels within our nation. Unfortunately, it has also negatively affected perceptions about South Africans in the rest of our continent and abroad. It is our contention, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, that the whole nation should give this matter, as well as the widely publicized deadline of June 30, 2026, intensive care, attention, and high priority. This standpoint should not be interpreted as an overreaction, because since the demand that undocumented foreign nationals must return to their home countries by 30th June has been made public, there has been negative and violent reactions by some of these foreign nationals, which suggests that we might experience a worse situation than the 2021 July unrests that saw hundreds of our black people killed and massacred in Phoenix, including the torching of trucks and destruction of properties by criminals. It is an undeniable fact, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, that our country is on a knife edge. Our nation must not be conned to cast a blind eye to this critical matter and ostracize, hoping that danger will pass and not have an effect on them. Ladies and gentlemen, we must stand together as a nation and nip in the bud any move that displays signs which will result in the loss of black lives in particular and ravage our country. At this point, we would like to specifically reprimand with the strongest terms possible some former and current government leaders that they should desist from publicly making credulous, obtuse, and irresponsible statements that are meant to trivialize the magnitude of this matter. Now, at this stage, we would like to address ourselves to the context and the source of this problem. The fact of the matter is that this reality of unprecedented huge numbers of foreign nationals in our country has been a ticking time bomb. It was just a matter of time before it escalated to catastrophic proportions. There's no country in Africa or the rest of the world, especially China, that has such disproportionate number of foreign nationals. One does not need to be a sociologist to know that. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we wanted to put it on record that illegal migrants are not identified by the color of their skin or their nationality. So inevitably, illegal immigration was bound to be an unnecessary source of the social, economic, and security problems in our country, because it puts unnecessary pressure on the resources of our country. The sad reality, however, is that the cronies that have occupied the corridors of power since 1994 in all levels of government have not given this matter the necessary attention it deserves, because they have not experienced the full brunt of these social, economic, and security problems that resulted from illegal migration, because they now reside in quotes, safer suburbs of our cities. All these years, the nation waited anxiously with anticipation for our government to intentionally and systematically stem this influx of undocumented foreign nationals into our country. In 2019, during his election campaign, the state president, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, publicly promised the nation that, quote, they are going to bring to an end, unquote, this scourge of illegal foreign nationals that have invaded our country. Ladies and gentlemen, it's more than 6 years since that time. And to the knowledge of the nation, he has done absolutely nothing about it. And in fact, the problem has actually gone out of hand since then. He was unashamedly making an empty promise to the nation so that he and his party can get votes of our people. The fact is, the swelling numbers of these illegal foreign nationals has placed an unbearable strain on our country's already dilapidated public facilities, which are themselves not sufficient to cater for the nation's needs and have not been cared for because of defunding by our government. This unfortunate state of affairs, ladies and gentlemen, really stretched our people's patience to breaking point. Therefore, it is our submission that our country is on tenterhooks as it is these days, because subsequent ANC-led government since 1994 has proved that they are incompetent and that they lack political will to tackle this matter. The fact is that they have derelict on their responsibility in this regard. The ANC-led government has failed the nation since that time. The ANC-led government, ladies and gentlemen, must carry the blame of where we are and what's happening in our country recently. Some people have concluded that this crisis is has been actually part of the private agenda of the ANC-led government and their masters. That every chaotic atmosphere in our country ultimately serves the narrative they have been propagating about black people in general. And ladies and gentlemen, it is not easy to dismiss these perceptions. It is difficult, for instance, to make sense of the apparent transition from an exceptionally stringent and tight security on our borders and ports before 1994, and how they have become so porous all of a sudden since that time. For decades now, ladies and gentlemen, our nation has been inundated by reports, some of which were corroborated by videos and so on, of corrupting government officials of Home Affairs, the SAPS, etc., who have been facilitating, in quotes, open borders to foreign nationals. Some of them have also been dishing out fraudulent documents to some of these foreign nationals. As far as we know, ladies and gentlemen, this corruption continued unabated. Hence, the numbers of illegal foreign nationals has been increasing. The ANC-led government has cast a blind eye and deaf ear to it. In fact, even some prominent politicians have publicly not only supported, but actually advocated that our country must be borderless. Such a stance that is even propagated and proclaimed on public platforms, ladies and gentlemen, literally undermines our country's sovereignty. It is not a small matter. In our view, it is subversive. And it is not understandable that our government has not been able to be decisive in rooting out such corruption and reckless, dangerous utterances, unless, as some insist, it is because it has been part of their private program anyway. If you listen, for instance, ladies and gentlemen, to remarks by such strategic persons in the defense of our country as South African Navy Chief Vice Admiral Monde Lobese, who decried the significant defunding of the South African National Defence Force and wondered if decision makers are influenced by criminal cartels and drug syndicates that thrive when our borders are porous, that precipitate perceptions that the ANC-led government seems to participate actively in the open borders program. Recently, ladies and gentlemen, the state president, Mr. Ramaphosa, addressed the nation about this matter of undocumented foreign nationals, where he stated that his government, open quote, is already taking decisive actions to overhaul the country's immigration and border management system, close quote. He also outlined what he called interventions to stop the influx of illegal immigrants into our country. However, 7 years ago, he was even more passionate when he made the same promises, and yet evidently nothing came out of those promises. As a result, ladies and gentlemen, it is rather very difficult, really, not to agree with those who depict him as Mr. Rhetoric or Mr. Commission, but with no action that result from it. The truth is that his recent promises has proven to be too little too late, because even after he has spoken, protest actions about this matter continued throughout the country. And what has become apparent is that the general public, that seems to be a fact, seem to have heeded for the call for the protest on the 30th of June 2026 about this matter. The sad part is that this tactic of rhetoric of our president has deceived him and many around him to believe that they have thereby succeeded to dupe and lull the nation. Unfortunately, such schemes will always have an expiry date. And this persistent, ladies and gentlemen, this persistent disregard of the people's cries and plight is going to come back to haunt them. It is also sad to realize that evidently he, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, and his cronies in government are unable to read the signs of the times, that there is a restlessness and unease within the nation at this moment that is seriously concerning. They can't seem to read the signs. Nevertheless, we want Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa and the government that he leads to know that, we want them to know that we put the blame of this crisis squarely on them. And whatever that will come out of this crisis, they have to carry the blame. Should there be any catastrophe that will ensue from this prevailing unprecedented tension and restless mood in our country, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa and his government will have to carry the blame. Right. So now we want to make a plea. We want to make a plea. And firstly, we want to make a plea to the organizers of the 30th of June 2026 protest march. We want to plead with you, ladies and gentlemen. We do not want to sound like we undermine your ability to organize a protest action of this magnitude. Nonetheless, we appeal to you earnestly that you should make every possible effort to have trained marshals during the march who will provide efficient management of the march for the safety of our people. It is a historical fact that whenever there's a legitimate protest action, the system will always plant agents, provocateurs, rogue and criminal elements and hooligans among the protesters, who will opportunistically exploit the sentiments of the marchers and fan violence and also such illegal activities, so as to not only tarnish the image and the integrity of the protest action, but also of the leadership thereof, and also to provoke the law enforcement agencies to unleash the brutality on our people. We know that they are capable of doing that, ladies and gentlemen, to plant people who will cause havoc and to ensure that the march is not peaceful. Therefore, it is important and of critical importance that you ensure that there is vigilance to watch that does not happen. And for instance, having listened to government officials recently, even up to yesterday, and some leading political figures, it seems apparent that they will do anything to make sure that this coming protest action is discredited. It does seem that way. And so we appeal to you to take precautionary measures as much as you can to ensure that those who may be planted to ensure that there's violence are not successful. We have seen enough blood in our country. And it is time all of us went way out of our way to prevent any such a disaster from taking place again. The second, our second plea is to the state president of our country. We would like to plead with you, sir. But let's assure you, first, that we will always support the office of the state president when they properly and legally execute their executive functions, and you are not an exception. As part of your management of this crisis, you said that, quote, "We are determined not to allow anyone to exploit this problem to destabilize our country," close quote. That's what you said. We accept, Mr. President, that you know more about the security challenges in our country than anyone else. Even though the truth is that that knowledge of yours has not translated to the safety of the majority of our people. However, what we are saying, Mr. President, is that we acknowledge that it is possible that you could have made that statement because of privileged information at your disposal. However, for us as citizens of this country who are not exposed to such security information, that statement you made is too loaded, Mr. President. It is worrying, Mr. President. It seems to be a subtle hint to us that there is a subversive plan to overthrow the government through this planned protest march of 30th June 2026. And your assertion that we will not allow seem to suggest a corresponding plan from you to stop all that by the full might of the law enforcement agencies. We must say here to you, Mr. President, as far as we know, the leaders of the protest march are planning to march to persuade your government to expedite the deportation of illegal foreign nationals. We do not know anything else. And so your statement is scary to us, Mr. President. It worries us. We haven't forgotten, sir, that you were able to give executive orders before you were even the state president that led to a massacre in the northwest province at Marikana to ordinary mine workers who were protesting for a living wage. You were able to do that at that time before you were even occupying the position that you are at now. Now, Mr. President, you wield more power even over the military. We are panicking, Mr. President. The fear of the repeat of a massacre causes us sleepless nights, sir. That statement you made can also unintentionally empower some among the law enforcement agencies who are trigger happy and who hate our people to shoot even at the slightest and softest provocation. Mr. President, we hope that there's no plan by your government to take advantage of these ordinary rights of citizens, to flex your muscles of power as a form of silencing your political opponents and stopping dissent. It is concerning, for instance, Mr. President, that the acting Minister of Police has announced that he has redirected some 600 million of SAPS funds to use it in the management of this 30th June 2024 protest action. One day, 600 million. This is unprecedented, Mr. President. It makes one wonder and think, what's the plan? He has even pulled in the services of private security companies, such as G4S, Fidelity, and Bidvest coin. It is instructive, Mr. President, that all these private companies, security private companies, are white-owned companies. White-owned companies. What are we supposed to read into that, Mr. President? That should we ignore that it may mean that these are people who will find it easy to unleash brutality on our people? It's difficult not to arrive at that conclusion, Mr. President. We're panicking. It is also concerning, Mr. President, that your minister has taken funds, this 600 million, from the SAPC that don't have enough police, have no manpower or person power, and that has no state-of-the-art equipment and resources to combat these high levels of organized crime in our country. What does that mean? However, we would like the acting Minister of the Police know, we would like to remind him that that money is public funds. And we promise you, Mr. Acting, whatever your name, Mr. Kashalia, we promise you that we will be watching with the hawk's eye that you must account on how you utilized this 600 million. We will not slip and stop until we get the detailed account, because that's public funds. We plead with you, Mr. President, please say, have a little Ubuntu this time. Give direction to all the law enforcement agencies who will be deployed to manage the 30th June 2026 protest march, that they should exercise maximum restraint in the process of crowd control on the 30th of June. Please, Mr. President, we have seen too much bloodshed of our people in this short period of ANC rule, and really specifically under your watch in our country. Siyakucela, Mr. President, please, not again, reakopa. And at this stage, before I continue, ladies and gentlemen, let me ask Professor Libusa here, he must make another statement that is important at this stage.
Now, in view of this call that has been made so far, we call upon the military. The generals must remember that their primary responsibility is the defense of the nation of South Africa, not against the nation. And therefore, they must not allow any politician or political party to cause them to deviate from that constitutional obligation and solemn pledge that they have made to the country, for the fact that by the president subjecting certain key departments of security cluster under his office, such as intelligence, he has covertly assumed dictatorship, where he will exercise absolute control over the safety and security of God's people, which we do not have confidence in, for the fact that appointing a minister who has no clue about defense to be the Minister of Defense, where we recently saw about 95 Libyans opening a training camp in our country.
All right, let me continue now to make a plea to the marchers, every one of our people who will participate on the march on the 30th of June 2026. We'd like to make a plea to you. We request everyone who will take part in the march to obey every instruction by the leadership of the march. We have listened to the leadership of the march as they continue to plead that the march will be peaceful. Please, we beg you, we plead with you, Bantu betu, Batu Baboruna. Please listen to the instructions of the leadership of the march. And please be alert and be vigilant. And Batu Mutle har vigilant, har vigilante. Why Batu why is that vigilante? Vigilant and watch out for those who will be planted in your midst. They will be there to provoke the crowd to violence and criminal actions. We are old enough to know that the system always planned them. They always do. They will be there. Watch them. Be alert this time and disappoint them. Because as far as we're informed, ladies and gentlemen, the march is not about insulting. The march is not about insulting or fighting illegal foreign nationals, but to demand from our government to expedite their deportation as a matter of urgency. Therefore, we plead with everyone to conduct themselves during this march with the dignity that befits us as Africans. Just be disciplined, conduct yourself with restraint. Just be disappointed because they actually want to tell the world that's the reason why we have to rule and govern them with a strong hand. That's what I'm saying, man. Just be disciplined. March, it is your right, but peacefully so. The last call we want to make is to the church. And after I say something here, Apostle John, you will say something. Ne? I want you to say something about, Apostle John will say something about our biblical mandate on our own borders. All right, we all would like to make an appeal to the church leaders, to every Christian, and to the church. We would like to plead. We all know, Baruti, Gaufela, all of us, that behind every natural occurrence, there's a spirit. We also know that there is a spirit that seems to want to shed blood in our land at this time of the year from time to time. Please note that. It seems to be at this time of the year. It was July 2021. It was around June 1976. When was Bipatu? What June, month was it? June.
17 June.
John spoke about. Bipatu was there is a spirit that wants to shed blood in our country at this moment. So we are not restless out of nowhere, but bamudimu, and the church is there. And like we're saying here, that there's no entity except the church that has the capacity and capability to can wrestle against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. God is depending entirely on churches, Christians, church leaders, entirely. Because God is troubled by his people who are killed like they are not humans, created in his image. We plead him with the church. This time is for us to lift up our hands, a la Moshe on the mountain, Exodus chapter 17, when he lifted up his hands when the war was being battled down on the ground. Joshua was winning the war because Moses had his hands lifted up. And if Moses' hands dropped, Joshua was losing the battle. And ladies and gentlemen, Joshua losing the battle meant people are being killed. We can't be that insensitive as Christians. We have to do our part. If we can't march, which is a natural process, but there's a spiritual thing we can do. We can bind the spirit in the realm of spirit, and only the church has that capability. We're pleading, therefore, we request every Christian, every church leader, every church to dedicate a period every day from today. What is the day today? 25 June 2026. From today, 25, to make fervent prayers against spirits that would want loss of lives and destruction of properties in our land. Let's come together as Africans. If we rally and stand together as a nation, we will be victorious. re a kopa modimo wa rona nkosi siyacela sikelele Africa. And before we conclude, I want us to, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who are recording, we will make a short fervent prayer at the end of this. Record us praying as well. You know, but record us praying so that you can show that we actually prayed against the spirits that want to shed blood. So at this stage, let me ask Apostle John Hatebe to just to inform someone. Someone does not actually realize that the Bible does talk about sovereignty of countries. Sovereignty of countries. Over to you, sir.
Amen. Thank you, Arch. Thank you, Chief Apostle. Thank you, ministers of the gospel, and thank you, audience. Firstly, just I want to say, borders are God ordained. Borders define nations. Borders identify nations. Borders maintain order. Borders provide security. Borders establish sovereignty of nations, etc. Borders are to be respected. It's Deuteronomy 19, verse 14. It is God who established the limits of nations, Acts 17:26. Borders define territorial limits, Numbers 34. Borders serve as protection. Borders separate people as God ordained, and they provide security for national identities. The removal of boundary markers or the removal of borders is forbidden by Scripture. Borders define the area where governing authorities operate. Moses one day requested permission to pass through Edom. He respected their borders. He was denied, yet he respected them. Let me say this again. Moses requested permission to pass through Edom. He respected their borders. He was denied by the Edomites. Moses respected that. Authorities are expected to manage their borders, and individuals are expected to honor them. The Bible supports the concept of national borders. Acts 17:26, it declares, he determined their appointed times and the boundaries of their habitation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say that those that are appointed to be, let me put it, politicians, are actually supposed to abide by the law, and they are also supposed to enforce the law. They must not exercise political supremacy to override or circumvent or block the law. They must not do that. Otherwise, we will find ourselves acting like a jungle. Where there is no law, it is only in a jungle. But where people are to regulate their behavior, laws are supposed to be there. And it is laws that also establishes jurisdiction. Now, when we fail, we as the leaders, or when political leaders, political heads fail to do so, then nations or people or sons and daughters in the country have a right to rise up to defend their national identity, to defend their national consciousness, to defend their national culture, to defend their national heritage. So that's where we are. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much. Back to you, Ash.